Introduce.
You want me to start? Okay, good. Welcome to class 305. Is that what it is? Something like that.
306.
306. Welcome 306 to the Godcast podcast, also known as Faith and Calm. And that's our favorite topics. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my favorite speaker, Yeheskel Shimon Goodfriend. Go ahead, Yeheskel Shimon. What did you want to tell us about tonight?
Me?
Yes.
You're going to pull it out of me, okay? So that's the
Okay.
whole point of the
Okay, fine.
podcast, right?
Okay,
So,
good. Yeah.
so this, I don't think I've said this, but this is based on a mimer by the Alter Rebbe, and it's not specifically for this parsha or a particular time, but I think that's because of that, it's relevant at all times because it's connected with the last line of the Shema that we say 3 times a day. And so it's a fundamental idea, a foundational idea, and I think a foundational idea in faith and calm too. So I actually wanted to call the title of this. What did you call the title of this class?
I called it Pleasure is Everywhere.
And I wanted to say, this is going to be the most pleasurable class you ever heard. So, because it's all about pleasure. And hopefully it will help you find that inner pleasure inside yourself and in all of your life. So, the end of Shema ends with the idea. The line says, "Ani Hashem Elohechem, I am the Lord your God, Asher Hotzetzi Escha Me'er Mitzrayim, who took you out of the land of Egypt. Liot Lechem Lelohim, so that I should be your God,
Elohim. Yeah.
Elohim."
Yeah.
And then it says, "Ani Hashem Elohechem, I am the Lord your God." Emes. So the Alter Rebbe is focusing on the idea that um, this idea, I am the Lord your God, it's not said everywhere. You could say it about every mitzvah that God gives you. I am the Lord your God. Okay. I mean, but it doesn't say that. It's only in very unique places does God actually say that. And usually it means the concept is, I am trustworthy. You can rely on me. I will give you the reward. You're worried about this. I'm telling you to do this. Don't worry about it. I am true. I am Hashem, Ani Hashem Elohechem Emes. I am truth, and therefore there will always be. Don't worry. You're not losing out on this. This is actually your key, your gate to receiving everything that you want. Just when you do the mitzvah, I'm making sure that everything happens to you. So here we see it twice. So this must be something deeply connected with this idea of this idea that I am Lord your God. The other thing he says is that this word asher is a little extra, and we say it in the blessings. We say a blessing. We say, Baruch Atam Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam Asher Kedishanu. Now asher, you don't have to say that. You could just say Kedishanu. You don't have to say what is this asher? So he says asher means rich, because asher with an ayin is rich. Asher mean with an aleph. Aleph means that, but you can exchange the two. So what is the richness in this whole idea? And every blessing, every mitzvah you do, that we say God is going to make us rich and delightful by doing this mitzvah. So that's what we're going to do to talk to tonight. And the idea that we're going to talk about here is that, and I'll give you a little bit of the background, and then I'll tell you what this is all about. So we know that there are different level parts of the soul, right? There's the intellect and there's the emotions. In more particular detail, we say that there's Chachma, Bina, and Dat. There's wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, comprehension, whatever, conception, comprehension, and connection. Those are the intellectual faculties and the emotional faculties, and those are the parts of the body, the soul, that comes down into our body. And we know we're aware that we're intelligent, we have emotions and so forth. We can feel them inside, but there are parts of our soul which are transcendental. What do I mean by that? They overrule. They're higher than all of this, but they don't necessarily. We don't have a direct connection to them. We have wants. We have neat wants. Ratzon. and we don't necessarily control it. I mean, I can't control it. I want it. You can tell a child, you should really want this. And he's going to say, no, I don't, because it's not me. I don't want it. So we know that Ratzon is higher. And the same thing on the level on God, too. His Ratzon is higher than he has wants, he has desires, and they don't necessarily connect with our intellect, but they're stronger than intellect because if somebody wants something very much, he'll, even if he doesn't understand it, he will make himself want to. I want to, I don't understand this idea. I'm going to work on my mind until I finally understand it. So Ratzon is overpowering. There is a long, long section from the Rebbe Rashab that discusses which is higher. Is it the Ratzon of the person or is it the Tainuk?
Can I ask a brief question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we know if Ratzon and Tainug, if will and pleasure, are they housed in the body?
No, they're not housed in the body. They're higher than the
They're
intellect.
higher than the body. They're the part of the soul that is
higher.
Part of the soul that is higher.
Higher.
Okay.
Higher. Tainug is the pleasure. So the question comes up is, why do I want something? Because I would get pleasure from it. Well, maybe because I want it, therefore I get pleasure from it. So this discussion goes back and forth, and finally the Rebbe Rashab comes to the conclusion that the highest form level of our soul is the desire for pleasure, basically life itself and the pleasure we have in this world. And that's what this talk is going to be tonight about. This idea to make it more crystal clear, what is this tainuk? What is this delight? Or some people translate it as this ecstasy. There are things that you do and you just say, wow, that I could have had a VA, I mean, that's life.
Are you going to talk about the ultimate pleasure?
I hope so.
Okay,
I don't know if I can explain it.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Right?
Okay.
So pleasure is really this delight, this pleasure is, and I'll give you a little bit of a precursor and understanding of it. There is pleasure in everything in this world. Everything that we have in this world, there's a potential for pleasure. God could have made it so that we ate food because we needed it to survive, but he didn't have to necessarily put any pleasure in it. He could have just made it a necessity, like animals. They just they eat because they have to eat. Nobody says that they necessarily go to fancy restaurants and say, I want the most delicious thing on the menu, but food is not only necessary to live, but we want the delicious version of it. The same thing with our eyesight, with our smell. There's a whole industry called the perfume industry, and it's all about selling the delights and the pleasures. Let me.
Sorry.
Okay. As I was saying, there is pleasure in everything. There's pleasure. There are things that are pleasure to the sight. They're pleasure to the nose, pleasure to taste. And each one of these different pleasures, there's a world of pleasure out there. And we have all these connections to physical pleasure. Now, there's also intellectual pleasures. A plumber might not like a beautifully designed, plumbing job. An electrician has his own level of pleasures. Musicians like music and so forth. And everybody has their own thing that they consider a pleasure. And the pleasure is not the same for each person. It's different for each person. This is all as an introduction to understand what is this pleasure and what is this delight. So we see that there's pleasures and delight in the different things in this world, and everybody has their own particular ones. Is there a hierarchy of these things?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay, good. You want to talk about that hierarchy of it?
The hierarchy of all the pleasures?
Yes.
I don't know about the hierarchy of all the pleasures. I only know about physically the highest pleasure. You know what physically the highest pleasure is? I'll tell you. The highest pleasure is simply being alive. There is nothing more pleasurable than life itself. And a lot of people are not aware of that because they're deeply wound up in depression, deeply wound up in worry. But the fact is that there is no greater physical pleasure than life itself, in no matter what condition the person is in a coma, in anything else. The life is an exquisite pleasure. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe, explains that he explains that we don't sense it because it's a constant pleasure. And a constant pleasure is not sensed unless it's threatened. And I've told the story before, but I'll briefly tell it again, that my father always said, I want no heroic measures at the end of my life. I don't want anybody to extend my life in any heroic fashion. I want to go when it looks like I'm going because my father hated pain. He hated pain. He was I couldn't get it. He's a strong person. He was my my role model, but he hated physical pain. He hated it. And so he kept saying, no heroic measures. Remember that, no heroic measures. And at the end of his life, when he had a choice of staying home and dying and going to the hospital, each time I gave him that choice, and I asked him what he wanted me to do, and he would say, "Take me to the hospital." And at the end of his life, he fought madly for every moment of his life. He had already had a major stroke. His brain had shrunk, and the doctors told us that the doctors told us that he has only 24 hours left to live, probably less than that. And my father, my during World War II, my father was he was a Jew in Poland. Not many of them survived, and he ran through bullets. He did all sorts of stuff. He was he had an amazing history, but he never was more heroic than those last days of life because he lived more than 24 hours. He lived for another 2 weeks, and the entire time his pulse was something like a 180 beats a minute, 200 beats a minute, which is a crazy pulse to keep up. And I realized my father is running from the Malach HaMavis. He's running from the angel of death, just like he ran in Europe away from the angel of death and beat the angel of death again and again and again. Here's my father who proclaimed that he wanted to die rather than face any pleasure, and he is running his hardest to get every last second of life. Go ahead.
So I was saying, that in, food and other things, there's a pleasure, and it turns out it's different for each person. And the question is, why is it different from each person? And we'll get to that too. Why should some people get pleasure from some things and delight from other kinds of things and for other things?
It's a great
This
question.
is a great question. And then the other thing is, as I also mentioned, there's a hierarchy of these pleasures. So we have to understand that the source of all pleasure, the source of all life, is from Hashem. It's one. It's oneness, it's connection to Hashem ultimately. What do I mean by that? So here in this world, we're far away from that. And so we get what's it called, basulis, the remainders, the residues of what the pleasure is up in the higher world. What can come down into
The
this
waste
world,
product.
the waste products.
Yeah.
And as the rabbis explained, there are angels who actually, everything in this world grows or flourishes because there's an angel above. So these angels process the pure source of holiness, and they actually then they enable us to there's these angels that are called kraim, which are intestines. So what does the intestine do? It takes the raw food and it separates the edible part from the non-edible parts. Those non-edible parts come down into this world, into the
Non-nourishing part.
physical world, non-nourishing parts into this world, and that becomes the pleasures of this world. In other
Do
words,
you mean the waste product?
the waste products,
Uh-huh.
the waste products of this world. But and even in waste
Of
products,
that world become
there are pleasures to have inside of there. The analogy that Rabbi YY used when he taught this class was as follows. He says, there's a certain kind of beetle called the dung beetle. And this beetle, it gets its food. Its food is actually dung. It thrives on it. They'll even fight with each other in order to get that particular food. And Earth also loves dung, and all sorts of things grow from it. Now we would be disgusted by it, but there's also the same thing in the hierarchy of pleasures. There are people who get off on pleasures of getting gold and silver. There are people who get excited about drugs and so forth. There are people who get involved, excited about illicit relationships. And then there are people who have a more refined sense of what gives pleasure. And they would say, looking at pornography, that's disgusting. I would never get pleasure from that. But there are other people who pay a lot of money for those particular things and so forth. So there is a hierarchy of things. But the basic line is everybody needs pleasure. That's why people gravitate to addictions and other kinds of destructive activities because they're looking for some sort of pleasure. And if they can't get it in, through higher ways, then they get it through the lower ways. This is a choice we all have of how to refine and to connect to a higher level of pleasure. Because when you connect to the deeper source of pleasure, there is much more pleasure. You would never give it up. This is what the story with Rabbi Akiva and it's explained in that mimer. Rabbi Akiva and the other rabbis who were going to visit Rome one time. They went to Rome to plead the case for the Jews, and Rome at that time had destroyed the temple and wiped out a lot of Jewish people. It was really an awful time for the Jewish people at that time, and the rabbis were getting off the boat in Italy, and from 120 miles away, parsons away, they heard this celebration going on in Rome. They were all celebrating the Colosseum and cheering and so forth. And the big rabbis, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, and so forth, were crying and weeping. And Rabbi Akiva was laughing.
Because disgusting things went on in the Colosseum. It wasn't a very
He asked, no, yeah, I'll tell you what they
yeah.
said. So the line in the Gemara goes as follows. He says, Rabbi Akiva said, why are you crying? They said, because the Jewish country is in wasteland, our temple is destroyed, and these heathens who are celebrating, all sorts of heathenistic activities and paganistic activities, they're having a great time and having pleasure. And Rabbi Akiva said, that's exactly why I'm laughing. And he said, why? Because if they are getting so much pleasure and happiness from these things, how much more so is it for the Jewish people who actually are connected to the source of pleasure? What he was telling them is not just that in the future we're going to get a reward in Gan Eden. That's not what God is saying. There's a schar and a reward here in this world. And Rabbi Akiva was saying as follows, that there are people who fixate on the very easy to obtain, quick pleasures of this world. And that's what they're attracting, overeating, fancy foods, perfumes, whatever it is. They're quick. You can buy it. It's easily accessible. And there's nothing, if you don't know that there's anything else, you're going to be gravitating to that. But we Jewish people know that, what? That's like eating dung, you do it today, and an hour later, you just need another one. You need a stronger drug next day, and another drug the next day, and another drug. So people pay for a prostitute, they need a fancier prostitute, another. It's a never-ending kind of thing that you're trying to look for a greater fix. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have pleasure in this world, but you have to realize that pleasure is coming down processed through intestines of angels until finally it comes down into the lowest form of pleasure. What we are challenged to do, that's what we say, Asher Kiddishanu made us happy, is that mitzvahs are a path and Torah is a path to get to a higher level, and there's more power, there's more pleasure in that particular thing. In short, what the pleasure in Tainug is I can give you a gift. I can give a gift to my wife. But it's not individualized. It doesn't matter to her. It's nice, but if I write a greeting card with that gift and say something very nice with it and very particular for it, she's going to appreciate it more. That is what Tainug is. It's that special attention, the special care, the special love that God puts in everything in the physical world. And he says, before you do that, realize who I am, say a bracha beforehand, and appreciate that there is inside of it a deeper pleasure. Of the pleasure of the mitzvah is more than the pleasure that just purely in the physical eating and consuming or doing the other kinds of stuff. So when you realize that, you tap in to the ultimate pleasure that would exist in everything. Another cute way he said it is, he says, pleasure is God's way of saying, I love you and I care about you. I'm not just giving you food. I'm giving you something that's delightful. I'm giving you a way to connect to me. I'm giving you a way to have that pleasure with me, together with me. You want to get it you want to just do it in an detached way, then you won't really get the ultimate pleasure. When you do it in a way that's attaching to the source, then you really are. So there's a cute story. I'll finish with this. It's Rabbi Groner. He was the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And one time, the background is as follows. The Rebbitzin, the Rebbe's wife, would have birth when she would have a birthday, many people would send gifts to her, flowers and ink chocolate. I don't know what they sent, but all sorts of different gifts would arrive at the house. So the Rebbe decided that he wanted to also send a gift. So he told Rabbi Groner, send a telegram. And he told him what to write in Russian. It was a beautiful, very warm, you know, blessings and all sorts of other wonderful things, all in Russian, and no clue of who it was from. And on the signature line, the Rebbe told Rabbi Groner to write in English, guess who this is from. And they sent a telegram like that. It was just a lot of blessings in Russian. And then this line, guess who this is from, with no clue who it was from. So Rebbitzin probably got it and probably went to her husband and said, I got the strangest telegram today, a letter in Russian with an English signature, and I don't know who it's from and so forth. They probably laughed a lot about it. So Rabbi Wai connected it to this whole idea that, the pleasures of this world is God's way of saying, guess who this is from? I'm not just giving you a way to survive. I'm not just giving you beautiful music or stuff like that you can appreciate on physical. Learn to see the inner pleasure of it, the pleasure of it, the delight, the tainug. The tainug is a message from Hashem. I am with you. I want to be with you. I'm together with you in this event. I'm together with you in life, the pleasure of life. And so when you're now in the summertime and there's all sorts of pleasures that you can have and so forth, you're supposed to always remember that, I don't want to just live on the superficial level, because those pleasures are nice, but you know what? I want the real mother lode of where all these pleasures are coming from. And therefore, we always try and remember, that when we're doing something consuming the world, we say a blessing, we're trying to actually make sure that we are actually connecting to the source of the pleasure, the higher level of the pleasure, not just the one that's a free-for-all that's available on the physical level.
I got several guess who this is from this weekend.
Uh-huh.
Should I talk about them?
Whatever you want, you
Okay,
take
good.
your notes in the
Okay,
limbic
good.
system or
Okay,
whatever
good.
you wanted to
Okay,
talk
good.
about.
Okay,
Now is
good.
my time to sort of listen to you, and you
Okay.
can process it and give
Okay,
it back
fine.
to me in
So,
a better way.
Haskell Shimon and I have friends in Israel. We have friends all over, and one of our friends is visiting here, and she was talking. She was talking a little bit about how she used to live in America, and about 10 years ago she made Aliyah. And she was talking, she's thriving there. Most of the Israelis are thriving through this rough time. But she said it takes a toll on our limbic system. Maybe I'm not loud enough. I should take it.
Yes, yes,
She
I
said,
wanted to ask, please
okay,
speak
good.
louder.
Okay, I'm gonna go closer to the microphone. So she said it takes a toll living in Israel. We're all here, we're all hanging in there, but it takes a toll on your limbic system, which is essentially like the connection between your rational mind and your deeper emotions. Because people are, they're in panic, they're in all these kind of things. And
Do you want me to fill in what they said about the limbic system? Because I remember what it
no,
said.
it's not. I
Okay,
think
fine.
it's just a small detail.
Okay.
So anyway, so, okay, so we had the pleasure of going to Crown Heights this Shabbos, and while I was there, a woman from Israel spoke in 770. A very engaging woman. She's not a shlucha. She's just a woman who is extremely active with helping other Jews. And she said, I know you hear all the stories about Israel, but I want to tell you a different part of the story I want to tell you a different part of the story that you're probably not hearing. She said, things are changing in Israel. In good ways. Things are changing in Israel in good ways. And she said, all sorts of people are changing. She said, my husband, for example, my husband's a quiet man, and he doesn't usually, she's like a big activist, but he's not. And one day he came home and he said, we have to clear out several rooms because there's going to be classes here in several of the rooms. And she said, classes? He said, yes. He didn't tell her any details. He just said, we have to make space in several of the rooms in our apartment. And later, a bunch of young people showed up, not religious, and there were different sessions going on, and her husband was speaking in a very engaging way. And there were these Torah observant teachers and Israeli youth that are not Torah observant that came to listen to what they wanted to say. It's a very unusual thing because in Israel, the Torah observant and the not Torah observant are worlds apart, and they irritate each other. It's not just in America they're worlds apart, but in Israel they live so close to each other they find each other very irritating. But that irritation is going away. And she said it's all over. Israel has become so secular that in the public school systems, they also teach about Christmas. Can you imagine? In Israel. And there's been a wave of non-religious people who are who are protesting that, and they say we want to go back to a traditional school system. We want tradition in our schools. We don't want to teach about every Tom, Dick, and Harry religion, and that's also a remarkable thing. And good. And she said even she said, yeah. So
There's somebody
anyway,
who can't reach.
sorry. Okay. So yes. So anyway, what about the rest of us? What about the frum world? What about the Torah observant Jews? How can we, they're if in Israel they're doing this, and the inspiration is what's happening. Iran is the inspiration for it. But how in America we have a deep level of internal stress, but we're not running to our mamad every second. We're not running to our mamad. But people are having a lot of troubles. I see that troubles are mounting left and right, and they're not getting solved so quickly. And so, what can we do in order to in order to in order to keep up with Israel, in order to keep up with our brethren who are growing? How can we grow? So, so first of all, obviously, we do what Hashem wants. That's the chief way to grow. And the other thing we can do is we lean on him much more. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my weekend, and I'm going to end with the traffic today. So so this weekend we went down to Crown Heights, and as you probably all know, I open and before I make a big move like driving to Crown Heights for Shabbos, I open Igros Kodesh, and if anybody doesn't know about it, you can just go to igrotkodesh.com, IGROTKODESH.com. You could probably just even write IGROT. And these are letters of advice that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave to thousands and thousands of people. They're not published with the person's name. The name is cut off, but the advice is there. And it's a Jewish tradition. It's not just a Chabad tradition that when you have not a question about what is halachically right. What is halachically right? You go to the sources, you go to the books, you go to the rabbis, you go to the ones who know. But a question about should I move to Paris or should I move to India? Or should I move to Paris? Yes or no? You can open any holy Jewish book and get direction from it. So Lubavitchers, we're very connected to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe has volumes of letters, thousands of letters of advice that he's written to people, and people get the most amazing answers. So anyway, before we decided to go on this trip, I made sure to open up Igros Kodesh and see if we had a blessing, and we had a clear blessing. So we went down, and on Friday night, the first night we were there, I had one of the worst nights of my life. It was it was very, very, very
And
distressing.
don't think it wasn't distressing for me too.
Okay, I'm sure it was distressing for you, but it was so distressing for me. And I have a particular medical situation that I'm very worried about, that I think about, and it was really acting up. And it was so distressing. The time was passing. We didn't go to bed till 1 o'clock, but it was 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and there was no solution in sight. I was doing everything I could think of to help myself. And a little sarcastic voice inside my head said, "This is a trip you got a blessing for?" Yeah. And so anyway, it was so stressful because what was happening? I was parting myself from the Rebbe and parting myself from Hashem. I don't see kindness here. I don't see any kindness here. And I have no solutions. I've tried so many solutions and they're not helping. And in the morning, thank God, I eventually I did something to help myself. I figured out something. But in the morning, I woke up and I thought that whole night was a mess. It was a mess because of me. It was a mess because of this. It was a mess because of the decisions that I was making and the way I was thinking. Instead, what I should have done is I should have said, you know, instead of thinking, Hashem's not helping me, he's not helping me, he's not helping me, I should have said, you know what? I know Hashem wants to help me in this. Let me think a little. Let me be calm and have more ideas. And indeed, there were more ideas. There were things available in the place that we were staying, and they're not abstruse ideas, simple ideas, and they were there all along. And if I had just said, you know what, I believe, I know that you want to help me, Hashem. I know it. I'm just going to relax in that confidence that you want to help me, and it's a channel to receive completely different kinds of ideas. I want to tell you that the weekend went on to be one of the best trips to New York that we ever had. It was wildly good. And wildly good, full of blessing, just absolutely full of blessing. Beautiful human encounters, beautiful signs of blessing. And we just came home. We just came home today, like an hour ago, and we were flying. We were, like the traffic was going so smoothly, and all of a sudden the traffic stopped, and I employed something that I did on a previous trip. I was thinking, you know what? Traffic is crawling. There's something Hashem's not so happy with. He's slowing us down. And I thought, you know what? I don't think he wants us to listen to this particular thing that we're listening to. I know that I have to teach in camp tomorrow, and I have to teach about the 12 Pesukim. And I remember there was a rabbi, Shais Taub, who gave a magnificent, it's on YouTube, a magnificent session on what the 12 Pesukim are all about. And essentially, one main point is that the Rebbe intended them for the children to memorize and then become teachers and teach other children, not just the words, not just you know, simple memorization, but to teach that each one has a simple concept that one child can pass on to another child. And as he said, the Rebbe once announced, if a student in school finishes learning the book of Bereshis, the first of the 5 books of Torah, what should he do? What's the next thing to do? And the Rebbe said, you would think the answer is, okay, learn the second book, Shmos. He says, no, that's not the immediate answer. The immediate answer is that he should go out and teach Bereshis now. And he wants children to be their own army of teachers. So anyway, as soon as I said, I'm switching the channel. We're gonna find this Rabbi Shais Taub talk. We found the traffic was crawling, absolutely crawling. It was supposed to be crawling for the next. It was supposed to make the next 10-minute leg of our journey into like 40 minutes, something like that. As soon as we switched to this lecture that I knew I needed to listen to in order to talk about it tomorrow with the kids, boom! The traffic just sailed, and we got home in the fastest time we have ever done. Nothing ever compared to it. So anyway, and what was that? That was my pleasure. I knew, you know what? Shlomo Seudas, you did something for Hashem, and Hashem broke the traffic for you. He broke the traffic to show you, yes, I like this. I like it when you use your time extremely well. So anyway, that's pleasure. The pleasure is I gotta guess who gave you this, and it was so obvious who gave it to me. And those moments are the keenest pleasures that we can have in life. So um, so anyway, I want to give everybody a blessing that we relax our anxiety, we relax our constant problem solving. We instead go blank a little bit and just get used to the mindset. Hashem wants to help me. He wants to help me. And then you open the door to new avenues of blessing. So I'm going to turn off the recording, and if anybody wants, they can ask any questions that they want. Here we go. Stop.